Mes chers collègues,
Colleagues, I think we can get started. The sitting is resumed. I have an announcement to make. The relevant Polish authorities have submitted to the President a request for the waiver of the immunity of Mr. Robert Iwaszkiewicz as part of a procedure against him on an administrative breach. In accordance with the rules, it should be submitted to the Legal Affairs Committee, which is responsible for these matters. Having said that, let's move on with the agenda. The first item is an oral question commission hearing on summertime changes in Europe. It's the Committee on Legal Affairs and Transport and Tourism involved, so I'll give the floor to one of the authors, Mr. Svoboda. Mr. Svoboda, you have the floor.
Vážená paní předsedající,
President, Commissioner, findings of the public hearing on daylight saving time held this year in March were clear. In the energy sector, there is no need for it, as what we save on light is spent on heat. The same is true for transport. However, according to research carried out recently by 9 European universities, health concerns are numerous. Changing the clocks causes health problems for about 20% of the Europeans, whilst the remaining 80% are unable to comprehend that this could have a health impact. These health problems span from fatigue, feeling of sleepiness or disorientation, to digestive problems, migraine or depression, all the way to triggering genetically based diseases such as obesity, diabetes or even heart attack. Summertime change causes fundamental difficulties for people suffering from autism. This research estimates that direct and indirect costs linked to these health issues in the EU amount to 131 billion euros. This could mean that the EU citizens spend almost as much for the functioning of the EU, which amounts annually to 140 billion euros, as for remedies of health damage caused by this one single directive. The Commission reacted by a press release in which it stated that member states did not complain and that this Commission was not going to deal with such an insignificant matter. Thus, the Commission considers health problems of 20% of the Europeans to be insignificant. If the research of 9 universities is right, then the Commission considers damage on human health, which amounts to the budget of the Union, also to be insignificant. I consider such a statement to be scandalous. True, member states probably don't complain, but then again, states don't suffer from depression or diabetes. However, people do complain. The EU citizens complain to us, their representatives in the European Parliament, and that alone must be enough for the Commission to start seriously dealing with this issue. Therefore, I am pleased to be able to raise this question to the Commission, and I'd like to ask the Commission to provide a proof that the research of those 9 universities is wrong and that there are rational reasons in favour of maintaining daylight saving time, to prove that there are reasons which outstrip health damage caused to 20% of the EU citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I now give the floor to Mr. Kramer.
Frau Kommissarin, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen.
Thank you, Commissioner, colleagues. I'd like to thank the Juri Committee and Mr. Svoboda for this initiative. The TRAN and Juri Committee have this initiative together. We both have these concerns. This has effects on transport, transport security, transport plans, working hours. That's why in March we had a joint hearing between both of the committees on this issue. The opinion of the experts were clear. Experts called into question this time change. The negative consequences are very clearly laid out. There does not appear to be any scientific reason for the summer time change. I share the disappointment of my colleague Mr. Svoboda on the communication from the Commission, which refuses to deal with this issue seriously. There was an initial argument of energy saving for this time change. Now, of course, as a Green, I am in favour of saving energy. That's also the goal of the Commission. But what we're seeing from studies is that there's been no effect at all. And in fact, there's been a negative effect. Instead of the positive effect of saving energy, we're actually wasting energy. So we need to change this. We want to review this properly to see if this current system makes sense anymore. Particularly in the transport sector, we have specific problems. People are very tired after the time change because they have an hour less of sleep, and this is a real danger for safety. There are special plans that have to be made for timetables. There are changes made to the trains so they can stick to the timetables with the time change. It's crazy. There are a number of different processes for transport and logistics that are affected by this. We're talking about 1.7 million a year here. Do we have so much money here to spend? I could think of 1,000 ways we could better spend this money. I think it's in the interests of citizens and member states. So my question to the Commission, why are they ignoring all the research, particularly from the US? When are they going to review the effects of time changes once again and give us proof of these energy savings? What are the costs and benefits? Are we actually seeing energy efficiency here? Is this the way that the Commission wants to deal with citizens and MEPs? So once again, thank you to the committee, to Mr. Swoboda, and to the Commission. It's important that you look at the facts, and we look forward to hearing your response. Thank you.
Merci, monsieur. Et je vais donc passer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crum. I give the floor to the Commission. Madam Bulc.
Madam President and honourable members, the Commission is aware that in regular intervals citizens ask for the abolition of summertime. Citizens mainly point at health problems, but also question if the reasons that led Member States to introduce summertime have proven valid. Be assured that the Commission is taking the concerns of citizens seriously, and the Commission has examined different studies on the subject matter. However, these studies present mixed results, so that no conclusive argument was to be gained from them regarding potential impacts on health, energy savings, or other impacts, for instance, on road safety or productivity levels. The Commission does not have estimates of the economic benefits and costs of changing clocks, watches or schedules, neither of the impact of energy efficiency of electric lamps and appliances on current summertime arrangements in Member States. So the Commission believes that the reasons that motivated the adoption of the directive on summertime arrangements in 2001, which is to ensure the proper functioning of the internal market through a harmonisation of timetables, is still valid. It therefore does not see a reason for revisioning of this directive at this stage.
Merci. Nous allons ouvrir le débat.
Thank you. Now we'll open the debate with a round of group speakers, starting with the EPP in the person of Mr. Royal for 2 minutes.
Frau Kommissarin.
Madam Commissioner, I hold you in high regard, but this reply is a bit of a cheek. Really, it is. There are problems for some people, and if you want to take these seriously, it's not good enough to hear what you said. We haven't had an honest or decent answer from the Commission for 10 years, but really, I mean, this is laughable. I mean, it's absolutely incredible the way you're dealing with this health issue. With every other health issue, the European Parliament gets very upset, but not here. But the central issue, Madam Commissioner, please, and pass this on to the rest of the Commission, the central issue. Are there enough reasons? Are there reasons to do this? Is there a reason? Is there grounds to annoy people with this and not to overturn it? I mean, I mean, why do we have to justify going back to the normal situation? It's a source of irritation, it's expensive, and also a reason, but there's really no reason to change the time. Give me one cogent reason why we've got to change the time. Then I'll be on your side, but really, I really don't see what we could go with this. We'll be hearing about less regulation, so what's stopping it? If it makes no sense to change time twice a year, why do it? If there was a single reason, you'd have a reason, but really there is no reason at all to change time, and all there are problems. Let's just go back to a situation that is normal, and the single market argument is the silliest of all. Nobody wants something different in countries. I mean, obviously the single market is important. Obviously, a single rule for whole of Europe, but really, ladies and gentlemen, please, let's take this issue seriously. When I began tackling this issue, people thought I was a dream. But I've had tens of thousands of petitioners who've signed this. Please, take this matter seriously.
La parole au nom des socialistes et démocrates.
Now, Ms. Regner for the Socialist and Democratic Group.
Thank you very much. You can see, Madam Commissioner, this is a very passionate debate, even if there are few of us in the room here. I think your response was really very technical, and it doesn't really deal with the concerns of the citizens. It's not just about the single market, it's about time and how that affects every single individual. People have opinions on this because it affects their everyday life. So I would really like to make a heartfelt plea for abolishing these time changes twice a year. I'm speaking for people who have a very difficult time with this and who don't have a strong lobby. Commuters, for example, and students, school children. A lot of people are affected by this, and people have a very hard time with early starts. People have to do this in the dark, so this is really a plea for those who have to get up so early in the dark. Thank you.
Madame Kyllönen pour...
Ms. Kyllönen for 1.5 minutes on behalf of the UL.
Madam President, the directive on daylight saving times has come to the end of the road. We need a change so that this changing of time stops. This is unnecessary. The research has clearly proved that people's sleep is disturbed when there is a change of time. This is particularly the case for seniors and for children. It's difficult for them to adjust their internal clocks. According to research, it's been shown that this affects people's mental health and can generate the symptoms of depression. And a lot of money is spent on depression throughout Europe. Really, does the Commission want to add to this burden for Member States? Furthermore, there is an impact on economic life as a result of this. Now, we have to note that in Russia they've managed to get rid of the change of time, and they did so a while back, and they did so on the grounds that it was beneficial for the welfare of people and animals. If Russia can do this, how can Europe fall behind? It's our time to stop playing around with people and animals' health. My own view is that we could just keep with winter time, and my country could shift it to Central European country. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Hautala has the floor for 2 minutes on behalf of the Green Group.
I think it's pretty incredible that the European Union should say in a press conference that the European Commission deals with serious issues and that this isn't serious enough for the Commission. It's really absolutely incredible that you have this kind of arrogant attitude towards people's concerns. Every time when I write about this on Facebook, I get thousands of comments. It really shows that this is seen as an important issue by citizens. And I remember this because my child was born when it was a change of time back in 1981. This whole issue does generate serious problems for people's health. It affects the biological clocks of people and animals. It generates unnecessary costs, risks in traffic, in workplaces, in schools, in kindergartens. Now, we really need to change it. And the current directive is pretty much a one-off. It dates back a few years. We really have to put this whole question of changing times into the dustbin of history. It affects economic life and people's personal lives. And the people who know about circadian rhythms are in support of this. And as our colleague said, that if Russia can be in favor of the health of animals and people, why can't we? Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Stücher for 1 minute. Thank you, Madam President. Well, time hasn't stood still at the Commission. The PVV raised this matter 5 years ago. Is the Commission familiar with British research that suggests that summertime is much better for health than wintertime? And does it agree with that solution? So we're saying let's stop wintertime. It's better for health and for tourism, the transport sector, and for energy saving too. At a time of energy savings, we don't spend so much on heating, but in the summer people are using more electricity on air conditioning. And not having enough light at certain times of day causes more accidents. So what can you do to abolish wintertime? If you're prepared to do so, how are you going to go about it?
Merci, Monsieur Becker. 2 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Becker, 2 minutes.
Frau Präsidentin.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, President. As you can see here, there is indignation across all the political parties at the inaction from the Commission and Council. We want an immediate review of this twice-yearly time change. We need a serious scientific review. What you are telling us, this is not serious quality scientific information. There's no benefits in terms of energy saving. There are higher costs. We have numerous expert opinions and scientific studies, and from European universities, chronobiologists who all say that there are significant costs and risks. These risks are not properly being checked. There are obviously important other questions in Europe, migration, for example, jobs. However, health of citizens and wasting money, that's also an important concern for Europe. We have increased road traffic accidents. We've seen from an Austrian study 48% more accidents. These are things that can't be ignored. I welcome Juncker's plan to check if regulations are working every couple of years, and that hasn't happened here, and it's high time that it does. Responsibility needs to be taken here. Thank you.
Monsieur Le Breton.
Mr. Le Breton for 1 minute. Thank you. Commissioner, For 40 years now, Europeans have been changing the time twice a year. It's time to come back to a single time zone, as Russia did in 2011. On the 24th of March, the European Parliament convened a meeting of experts who demonstrated that there are serious problems with the changes, particularly disturbed sleep for children, cardiovascular incidents, and effects on livestock. The supposed advantages have not been proven. There's no proof that we've saved any money or reduced the number of accidents. Which being so, the European Union must stop changing the time and act on the expectations of 65% of French people who were polled. Let's go for some time rather than winter time. Listen to the people and stop this system that no one understands. Now we'll have 8 speakers under Catch the Eye, starting with Zaborska.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente, Mrs. Commissioner. Chcela by som sa poďakovať predovšetkým.
I'd like to thank my colleague Svoboda for his perseverance with which he's taking this matter. This administrative measure is coming from the previous century. I think it's high time for us to consider whether the arguments that were valid 100 years ago, or in 2001 for that matter, are still valid today. The fact that the Commission is treating the initiative of the Parliament on this topic with irony, I consider inappropriate for 2 reasons. First, the administration is not here to treat the proposal of MEPs with irony and wit. And the second reason is the direct duty of the Commission is to submit any proposals to a due analysis. Therefore, I'd like to repeat the questions asked by my colleagues, and I'm asking the Commission to treat this matter with seriousness. Thank you.
Monsieur Frunzulică, 1 minute également.
1 minute for Mr. Frunzulică.
Madame la Présidente, j'avais les notes en anglais, mais...
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I had my notes in French and out of respect, I'll speak French. On this issue, friends, colleagues, look, my children head off to school in the morning, and when we change the time, they go when it's daylight, not in the dark. And I prefer my children to go to school in daylight rather than darkness. And at the same time, we really need to look at the impact of this, because there are many positive impacts of this. Believe me, as far as the situation we have in Europe at the moment, migration, the Greek debt crisis, and the economic situation more generally, unemployment, social situation, and so forth, on these, given that they're so serious, I don't think it's time to be discussing matters such as these. And allow me to say that I do not agree with the Commission's arrogance either. Thank you.
Merci de cet effort, Monsieur Frunzulică.
Thank you for that effort, Mr. Frunzulică. Mr. Marias, are you also going to give a speech in French?
Only Greek. Κυρία Πρόεδρε, ευχαριστώ.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. You can see the wide participation of colleagues and the passion in this debate. It shows that there really is a serious problem. The way in which you responded to these concerns, I think, was not sufficiently serious. We've had summertime for a number of years. Initially, it was considered positive. However, studies show the contrary. We had a public hearing in the European Parliament. I think now it's clear, and we have the studies to back it up. There are negative impacts on citizens, on industry, and it's not reducing the cost of energy at all. So this is a serious question. You need to deal with this properly. The citizens themselves are very concerned, and so I think the Commission has to carry out a proper study and give us a proper response.
Monsieur Ropé.
Thank you. Mr. Ropé has the floor.
Ačiū pirmininkė, gerbiama komisarė. Noriu padėkoti kolegoms.
Thank you, Madam President. Commissioner, I'd like to thank colleagues for moving this question. Allow me to draw your attention to another sector for which the time change has a substantial impact. I don't believe that farmers can explain to their livestock why there has to be a change of time. And this change of time in farming has a very negative impact, because people live according to the biological clock there, and we can't change that. And nonetheless, they've got to live by the economic time or official time, because they've got other issues to deal with, take their children to school, whatever. So I'd call on the Commission to take the initiative and change this.
Merci.
Thank you. Mr. Zurovsky next.
Předsedající, vážená paní komisařko, dámy a pánové.
Chair, ladies and gentlemen, Madam Commissioner.
Evropské komisi.
If there were a vote today, I think I would perhaps ask you, Commissioner, about the reasons for changing winter and summertime. And if your answer had been like you showed just now, I would really reconsider voting for your Commission, to be absolutely honest. I want a Commission which fights for the rights of their citizens, and if there are 500,000 odd people in the European Union clearly saying we want to abolish this relic of ancient times, which is absolutely useless today, I would have expected that you would have taken this opinion of the citizens and begin considering it seriously. Please stop being so ironic in this respect. Please let us really seriously consider this very serious impact on the health of our citizens. Let us change things. Thank you.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Ms. von Storch.
Ja, was für eine Debatte.
Well, what a debate we're having here. We hear all the way from left to right here. We've never seen anything like this. This is a very clear topic without ideology, talking about winter and summertime. This is something that the citizens do not want, and the Commission says, well, we don't have any arguments. I look forward to hearing what you have to say in response. How can you back up your arguments that we must have this time change? We don't want this, so you need to show us why we should be having this time change. You need to have decent arguments, and we haven't seen any of that so far.
Madame Šojdrová. Madame Šojdrová.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Bych chtěla poděkovat.
I would like to thank all my colleagues for sticking to the subject matter across political party lines. I don't want the Commissioner to take it personally, but Madam Commissioner, you represent the European Commission here, which is why our questions are directly directed to you. There are many people, and there are many reasons why this question is being asked. Whether it is necessary to mobilize the people in such a way and move the clock forward and then move the clock back. I think at this point in time we could show that European institutions are able to act and are capable of dealing with this technical issue quickly, because the people are bothered by many more important things that we have to deal with, but please act and change the directive.
Pour conclure, Monsieur Kelly.
Lastly, Mr. Till.
From my own observations, I have become more and more against the change of time in recent years, because I see it brings in the winter overnight and it stops the onset of spring by at least a month. But I come in here this morning and I'm delighted to hear cases being put by my colleagues and the impact actually it has on citizens and on agriculture, costs and energy. Mr Becker referred to 48% more accidents and disturbed sleep patterns for children. Surely the case is clear, and all it takes is for a directive from the Commission. It will cost nothing, and I am quite sure citizens will be delighted, and once again we will be able to show citizens we can act in their interest. If Russia did it, why can't we do it? Or are we afraid to say maybe the Russia were right and we're slow to follow them? In this instance, they were right, and we should introduce the change as soon as possible, because we don't want winter coming in overnight anymore, and we want spring to come in its natural order.
Nous avons conclu le catch the eye.
That brings us to the end of Catch the Eye, and so at this point I shall bring in Commissioner Bulc again. You have the floor, Madam.
Madame Bulc, nous avons conclu.
Ms. Bulc, we've finished Catch the Eye. You have the floor.
Madam President and honourable members of the Parliament, I really thank you for this very lively debate, and it is a very strong message that was commented before, that representatives of all parties are here discussing this issue. As stated in my introduction, the Commission is aware of the different arguments for and against. And let me tell you that I personally spoke with many Member States, asking them about their opinion, and I have to say that the opinion is divided. It's not so coherent as you are right now here. There are indeed many studies that are examining different potential impacts on health, but there is still no real strong argument to be gained from them at this time. The challenge, and I agree, is larger than we are sometimes willing to see. And I hear you, honestly. But also let me stress that my strong motivation is to keep the single market alive and to have a really anonymous decision on this issue. On the European level. So at this stage, the Commission does not consider changes to the relevant directive. But in case new evidence emerges and a more systemic approach is presented, we will be open to reconsider this position. Thank you.
Merci. Le débat.
Thank you. The debate is closed for the time being. And we will go on to the next item on our agenda, Ms. Foster's report on the safe use of remotely piloted aircraft systems, RPAS, in the field of civil aviation. So let me give our rapporteur, Ms. Foster, the floor.
Okay, thank you.
S'il vous plaît, mes chers collègues. Mes chers collègues, nous sommes passés au débat.
Colleagues, we've gone on to the next debate. Yes, you're quite right, Ms. Foster.
Madam President and colleagues, small radio-controlled model aircraft have been flown by enthusiasts for many decades. Indeed, the first recorded use in the UK was in 1935, when the British Royal Navy used the DH-82 Queen Bee for target practice. During the last 15 years, we've seen rapid growth in the use of remotely piloted aircraft systems, more commonly known as UAVs or drones. Technology developed primarily for military purposes is now being applied for commercial use, pushing technological and legislative boundaries. In recognition of the rapid development of this market, RPAS is rightly being incorporated into existing aviation programmes such as SESAR and Horizon 2020. In addition, the potential for growth in this industry, from the manufacturer to the end user, is immense, for large and small businesses alike. Therefore, it is imperative that we maintain world-class standards for manufacturing. Europe leads the world in drone development with 2,500 drone operators. In the UK alone, we have more than 600 RPAS operations providing services from photography to land surveillance. RPAS have become an increasingly popular alternative to manned aircraft for aerial surveillance activities amongst